So Ruby and I both recently turned 30. Ruby a little more recently than I. And we're both feeling a little conflicted about leaving our 20s behind. So I thought it'd be nice to try and feel young again by updating you, the listener, and Catherine on some Gen Z alcohol zeitgeist. And I'm sure it will all backfire. And by the end of it, I'll somehow feel older.
Right. This is great for my first week of being 30. I don't have the energy to do any biohacking, so I'm going to make myself feel 25 again by young splaining something to a Gen Xer. Are you ready, Catherine?
I'm so ready. I'm feeling really good about this.
Borg.
Borg.
Wait, guys, I remember you mentioning Borg last week, and I didn't know what a Borg was, so I'm dying to know.
So, a Borg is not an alien race from Star Trek, but instead a means of alcohol consumption that would put anything in Animal House to shame. Borg is an acronym that means Blackout Rage Gallon.
Ooh.
That is right. Okay, Ruby was concerningly already well aware of Borgs, but I had to get the lowdown on them from the same cousin I mentioned last week. And boy, are these things the absolute pinnacle of human civilization, a true test to the scholastic quality of our nation's institutes of higher learning.
Okay, I'm even more confused and far more concerned than I was a couple minutes ago.
And rightfully so, because imagine, if you will, a gallon jug of water, but you replace like half of that water with a handle of vodka, a drink mix of your choice, and some electrolyte mix.
You know what? I actually don't want to imagine that.
You have to. And now you have to imagine taking that gallon jug to a darty or day party and then getting absolutely obliterated. My cousin was telling me that some people try to tout the harm reduction aspect of these because of the electrolyte mix, but I
Hmm.
don't think that stands up to science. These things came about, I think, in like 2022, but they really hit their stride last year. And apparently they're especially popular at UMass Amherst annual Blarney Blowout. So
Well, another fun thing about Borgs is that you get to name them something punny, which is like my favorite thing. So you can name your Borg things like Cabernet Sauvignon or Borgaritaville, the Grand Borgapest Hotel, and then you write your Borg's name on the outside of the gallon with a Sharpie.
Okay, this is one of those things where it's like students have so much creativity and they're so bright. So how can we get them to channel that creativity onto something that's better for their health?
You can't.
before we move on, I want to clarify for my cousin's sake that she claims she has never actually borged, which is a verb. And I
Okay.
believe her. She is a nursing student and far too informed on the consequences to partake. And I just want to put that out there so my other family members that listen, she is not partaking in borgs, but she is an astute observer.
Well,
Good
I
to
mean,
know.
maybe there's something here, guys. Maybe we can get rid of the excess excess wine inventory somehow via boards.
Ah, yeah.
Ooh,
Cab Bourgogne Sauvignon.
yeah.
Freixenet cuts worker hours due to a force majeure. Champagne is wrapped up over neck wrappers. The future of Bordeaux futures hangs in the balance. And Chablis and Cahors have had a terrible, horrible, no good, very bad week. All this and more on episode 152 of your favorite wine news podcast. That's The Four Top, and I am your host, Catherine Cole, joined by Ruby Welkovich and Nick Toole.
Guys, the theme of this week is force majeure. Do you know that term?
I do actually, because I see it in contracts all the time. It refers to those uncontrollable circumstances that arise and just get in the way of business being conducted as usual.
Yeah, I think we all got a pretty good sense of what a force majeure clause refers to during, peak COVID, just like
Hmm.
four years ago now. Just pretty wild.
Wow.
It's like we all agreed to do this work, but then some crazy shit happened in the world, and now we can't. Fun fact: I was actually classified as an essential worker during the pandemic because I worked at a manufacturing plant for beer.
That
So
is essential. It was very essential during COVID.
Yeah. Well, a couple of our news stories this week are about force majeure situations. The first is a follow up on a story that we mentioned in episode 147. So, as listeners might recall, the kava giant Freixenet had to declassify its wines this year due to severe drought.
That's right. As of this coming summer, Freixenet bubblies will not have the usual Penedès appellation on them, and they will not be made according to traditional method. They will be called Cuvée d'Espagne, and they'll be produced using the Charmat method, so kind of like Prosecco.
And they'll attempt to produce that Cuvée de España with less labor if the Catalan government will let them.
That's right. Freixenet is attempting to implement what is called short time work, which is essentially a furlough or a reduction in hours for its unionized employees. Their justification is this force majeure, but the Catalan government is not accepting that.
Well, I'm fairly certain that with short time work, the government shoulders some of the financial burden. So it's not surprising that the Catalan government in this case does not want to accept this force majeure explanation, which is related to climate change and the terrible harvest.
Yeah, this is a great example of how the industry and the world is underprepared for climate change. The question is who should shoulder the burden of climate catastrophes? Is it the business? Is it the government? I can tell you it's certainly not the worker, but it is a very tough question to ask. Okay, quick wine history lesson for you all. Did you know that the neck foil on champagne bottles was originally added to hide impurities in low fills?
Wow, I did not. That is very sneaky.
Yeah, I did know that, but I'm guessing this is your way of segueing into our next story, which is actually about infighting and squabbles in the Champagne region.
Right, you are, Catherine. Very astute. We turn to Caroline Henry of Wine Searcher this week for a little news about champagne. So, the groups involved in the Champagne appellation have historically moved in lockstep. And I'm going to stop there and let Catherine do the French pronunciation for you.
Oh, no, so much pressure. I'm not a French speaker, so I apologize in advance. But there are a lot of terms and organizations we need to talk about. First of all, the Union de Maisons de Champagne, the UMC, and then also the Syndicat Général des Vignerons, the SGV. Together, these groups govern the CIVC, which many of you folks in the wine industry have probably heard of. And that is the Comité Interprofessionnel du Vin de Champagne. And they dictate what goes into what is, here comes some more French guys, the cahier de charge, which is a list of specifications about the appellation. And making changes to this rule book, this cahier, is usually a very democratic process.
Right, but lately there's been some infighting. And most recently, that infighting has been about the classic foil neck wrap on champagne bottles. Last year, the European Union dropped a 20 plus year requirement that sparkling wine have foil neck wraps, and more sustainably minded champagne producers took this opportunity to ditch the foil for a strip of paper instead.
Yeah, so I'm actually looking at the decanter article and specifically the Emmeline de Sluver, I believe is how to pronounce her last name, bottle. And I think it's beautiful with the strip of paper. Very minimalist, very chic. I'm a fan. So while these producers did go through proper process to get permission to ditch foil necks and even did a bit of consumer research to make sure it wouldn't impact sales, the CIVC is not happy. They want to make these foil necks compulsory again, and they want to do so ASAP.
Yeah, apparently there are some initial consumer studies that showed that folks see the neck foil as an essential way to identify champagne. But that seems a little bit funny since a lot of sparkling wine packaging includes neck foil, so I'm not really buying the CIVC's argument that the foil will help consumers avoid confusion because, it could be a different sparkling wine with a foil neck.
Yeah, it's not a strong argument. And at this point, revising the Cahier de Charge, which is that appellation rulebook, to force champagne producers to use foil necks would really hurt those producers who have already ditched them. And I gotta say, I agree with you, Ruby. I find those bottles without foil to be a lot more elegant. And the Champagne region as a whole really has done a lot of talking and action about its commitment to sustainability. There's not much they can do about the packaging. The bottle weight has to be fairly heavy given the atmospheric pressure of champagne. Those bottles are going to explode if the glass isn't thick enough. So there's not much they can do there. But ditching those neck foils is a simple and doable move towards sustainability.
Totally. It's interesting to note, though, that foil necks only account for 0.6% of the appellation's total carbon footprint. So ditching them isn't exactly a silver bullet, but incremental changes are really important. So, yeah.
Yeah, cheers to that.
So, guys, do you know what futures are?
Does that have something to do with stock trading?
Or to me, it kind of sounds like a futuristic EDM album.
What is EDM?
Oh, electronic dance music? Do we need another zeitgeist?
That'll be next week's cold open.
Yeah.
No, I know what that is. I just didn't know what EDM was. Okay, cool. Well, those are both valid answers, guys. But in the wine industry, certain highly anticipated wines are sold before they are bottled and released. This practice of futures, is best known in Bordeaux, where futures are really part of the culture. Many of the best chateaux participate in what's called En Primeur Week in late April. And this is when the critics, importers, merchants, restaurateurs, even some collectors come and visit the chateau. They taste the wines out of barrel, and then they buy those futures. They get those first dibs on wines that they think in a few years will be the best. And then they also have some really fancy black tie parties.
Ooh la
Oh.
la, that sounds like fun. But okay, so similar to stock futures in that people are buying something before it's available. This sounds like a good deal for producers since they get the money up front to cover production costs. But for this system to work, the futures price should be lower than the actual bottle price when the wine is released, right? So the futures buyers get to save a little cash by investing in the wine early.
That's how it's supposed to work, but unfortunately for our negociant friends, 2017, 2018, and 2020 through 2022 were all disappointing years. The current prices for those Bordeaux vintages are below the futures prices. Yikes.
Yeah, so this year there was a major correction at En Primeur Week, according to Mitch Frank and Cassia Shifter at Wine Spectator. Chateau Lafite Rothschild, for example, released its 2023 futures at €396 per bottle. Now, that may sound high, but it's actually about 32% lower than the previous year release. That was the 2022. That price was €580 a bottle. So this was really shocking because Lafite is known for just always appreciating every year. It's like the old faithful of wine investments.
Yeah, we should clarify that those prices are ex negociant, which means it's kind of like a wholesale price. So the US retail price per bottle for those 2023 Lafite futures are more like $530. That's below the price of the past four vintages on the market.
Yeah. And side note here for all of you wine scholars, we should clarify that the term négociant in Bordeaux, it actually refers to more of like a broker than a winemaker. I know many of us think of a négociant as someone who buys juice and fruit and blends wines, but in this case, it's more like a broker. And according to this article in Wine Spectator, the négociants in Bordeaux are not happy. They are stuck holding on to a lot of back inventory and they can't sell it for the price they bought it for.
I mean, maybe 2023 just wasn't a good vintage?
Well, it was a reportedly kind of a mixed bag. It started out with a lot of mildew pressure in June and then ended up as the second hottest vintage on record. Production levels were high, so it's understandable that prices should drop, but not really by like 30%.
Yeah, that is a big number, and I think it's an indication that there's something bigger going on here, and I almost wonder if it's time for a little cultural shift. I mean, I think that maybe the days of excess demand for Bordeaux are numbered. The style of wines being made in Bordeaux is just not as popular as it once was, and all that exclusivity and gatekeeping around the release of those wines, I think is just gonna be less and less effective moving forward.
Well, guys, as you know, when I get incredibly depressed about climate change, I go into game show host mode.
Oh boy, here we go. Hit us, Nick.
Ruby, here we go. True or false? Almost the entire Cahors vintage will be lost this year due to frost.
I'm guessing the answer is true.
It's true, Ruby. According to Le Figaro, 90% of the vineyards in Cahors were completely wiped out by old Jack Frost in late April. The vines are now dried, brown, shriveled, and look to be dead.
That's actually really sad.
And Catherine, we know you like Chablis. Well, too bad for you. Try again next week because just this last week, hail the size of quarters destroyed one quarter of the vines in the Chablis region. True or false?
Oh, that's true. I read about that.
False. We're playing by Jeopardy rules. The hail actually ranged in size between ping pong balls and
Oh,
limes.
wow.
Oh, this is so sad. My beloved Chablis. I'm not sure I really want to talk about this anymore. Climate change is just such a bummer.
Agreed, because I can't stand to hear Nick's game show voice anymore.
I'm gonna go drown these sorrows in a bottle of wine. Cheers.
Perhaps a Borg.
That's Borg worthy news, yeah.
Yeah.
right. Well, thanks to all you listeners who follow the Four Top on social media and comment on our question of the week each week.
Yes, answers to episode 151's question about reusable wine bottles are still rolling in, so don't forget to check out our Instagram page and let us know your thoughts. But in the meantime, Nick, did we get any listener emails this week?
Oh, okay. Catching me a little off guard here, but let me check. We normally get a couple. Um, oh, okay. Yes, we did. We got a response from Michael Alberti.
Oh, yeah, Michael. Hi, Michael. He is the wine columnist at The Oregonian and great writer. And so, yeah, Nick, what did his email say?
It was quite brief. It just said, "I welcome my e-tongue overlords."
Huh. Well, okay then.
Yeah, so that was in reference to our most recent episode 151, in which we learned about Nick's favorite thing.
Yeah. Robot sensory probes on e-tongues. Ugh. I hope to never have to say that again. Gross.
Me too.
Well, thanks for your feedback, listeners. Please get back to us on social media or via email or, send us a robot sensory drone and let us know what you think of the show. All right, guys. Well, in lieu of a dessert course this week, I wanted to just quickly raise a toast to the wine writer Ed McCarthy, who passed away a few days ago at the age of 87. Ed's delightful writing style made wine appreciation accessible and enjoyable. In fact, as we were talking about Bordeaux earlier, I was just checking out a column of his from way back in 2012, and it was in defense of affordable Bordeaux, and it was just written in his lovely, lovely style. So to check out Ed's work, head over to Wine Review Online, and you could just look up his name, Ed McCarthy, in the search box, and you'll pull up a treasure trove of Ed's educational musings on wine. So cheers to Ed. This has been the Four Top Podcast. I am our executive producer, Catherine Cole.
I'm our producer, Nick Toole.
I'm media and design manager, Ruby Welkovich.
Keelan King is our sound supervisor and the composer and performer of our fantastic theme music. Please visit our website, thefourtop.org, to learn more about us, listen to back episodes, and learn how to sponsor our work.
If you have not already subscribed to The Four Top on iTunes or Spotify, please do so, and please leave us a rating.
Well, from Portland, where it has been raining on and off like cats and dogs these past few days, but thankfully not hailing like golf balls and limes, this is Catherine signing out.
From the east end of the original Portland, Maine, this is Nick signing off.
And from Borgland, New York, this is Ruby signing off. Stay safe out there, and thanks for listening.
No Borgs, people. No Borgs.